You were raised to be sweet, to say sorry even when it wasn't your fault, to shrink so others could shine. But one day, you stopped. And that day, the world met the real you. Not the nice girl, but the unstoppable woman behind her. And everything changed. This is not about becoming mean. It's about becoming real. Oh, darling, this happens. They walked over you because you let them. They dismissed your opinions in meetings, talked over you at dinner tables, treated your kindness like weakness. Because every time you wanted to speak up, you smiled instead. You thought being agreeable meant being lovable. You thought being silent meant being accepted. But what did it actually give you? Heartbreaks, burnouts, empty apologies, and a growing resentment that kept whispering, when will someone choose me the way I choose everyone else? But the truth is, no one can walk over you unless you're lying down. Standing tall doesn't mean shouting. It doesn't mean being loud. It means finally recognizing your own worth and refusing to shrink for the comfort of others. It means taking up space emotionally, mentally, spiritually. It means being the kind of woman who says, no, not today, not ever again. Let's talk about your workplace. That moment when you worked overtime, went the extra mile, helped your colleagues, and when promotion day came, they overlooked you for someone who just spoke more confidently. You told yourself, maybe next time. You didn't want to seem pushy. You didn't want to demand what you deserve. But here's the hard truth. Closed mouths don't get fed. And nice girls, they often get ignored. Because the world listens to voices that believe they deserve to be heard. Or take friendships. You were the friend who always said yes, the listener, the emotional fixer, the one who rearranged her plans every time someone needed you. But when you needed them, crickets, excuses, silence. And you sat there thinking, maybe I asked for too much. But no, you just gave to the wrong people. People who treat you like an option because you never made yourself a priority. And then comes love. Ah, love, where so many nice girls lose themselves completely. You stayed in relationships longer than you should have. You tolerated disrespect disguised as jokes. You accepted half loves and almosts, thinking it was better than being alone. You forgave too quickly. You stayed too quietly. And every time you felt your heart break a little more, you whispered, maybe he'll change. But listen to me. He doesn't change. When you tolerate him, he changes when you finally walk away. Standing tall is not about revenge. It's about reclaiming your backbone. The one life made you hide for too long. You begin to speak, not to please, but to express. You say no, not because you're angry, but because your peace is now the priority. You dress the way you like. You post what you feel. You stop asking, will they be okay with this? And start asking, will I be proud of this version of me? One day, your boss will ask why you suddenly speak with power. Your friends will ask why you're no longer always available. That man who took you for granted will wonder why you stopped texting back. And you won't owe anyone an explanation. Because when a woman who once kept her light dim starts to glow unapologetically, the whole room shifts. So yes, people stop walking over you, not because they changed, but because you did. You used to be available for everyone. The late night calls, the constant texting, the just checking in messages. You always wanted to make sure they knew you cared. You thought being present all the time was love. You thought showing up instantly made you valuable. But here's what they didn't tell you. When you are always available, you become predictable. And when you become predictable, people stop valuing your presence. You weren't desperate, you were just eager to be seen, to be loved. But desperation is not in the act, it's in the energy. It's when you abandon yourself just to feel wanted by someone else. And slowly, without realizing it, you went from being desired to being taken for granted. Have you ever noticed how the people who text less, who show up selectively, who move like they're not trying to prove anything, always seem more powerful? It's not a game. That's mystery. And mystery is not about playing hard to get. It's about being so whole within yourself that people become curious. They start to wonder, what is she thinking? Where is she going? Why isn't she chasing me like others do? Let's talk about dating. You used to double text, stay up waiting for replies, laugh at jokes that weren't funny, accept last-minute plans just to be close to him. You made yourself easy to reach, always emotionally open, always ready to adjust. And yet, the more you gave, the less he respected. Why? Because the energy you sent out said, I need you to validate me. But when you stop being that girl, when you respond with silence instead of neediness, when you let someone miss you instead of reminding them, you become unforgettable. Not because you played a role, but because you finally played yourself. In friendships too, you were the yes girl. The one who answered every call, showed up to every event, solved every problem. You were never too busy. You bent over backward just to stay close to people who wouldn't even cross the street for you. But now, when you pull back, not in anger, but in awareness, they start noticing your absence. They realize your presence was never loud, but always powerful. And that's when the shift happens. That's when you move from being someone who is used to someone who is missed. Even in work environments, mystery has power. The quiet woman in the room, focused, composed, not gossiping, not trying to be liked, she holds the most influence. Because while others speak to be heard, she speaks only when it matters. Her presence isn't frequent, but when it comes, it turns heads. And everyone knows she's not here to impress, she's here to lead. Mystery doesn't mean you hide. It means you stop explaining. You stop performing. You stop giving pieces of yourself to people who haven't earned them. You become intentional. You speak when it's real. You love when it's mutual. You give when it's respected. You no longer beg for attention. Because now you are the attention. You walk into rooms with silence, and yet everyone notices you. Why? Because you're no longer trying to be seen. You already see yourself. You stop being the girl who needed to be liked and became the woman they can't stop thinking about. Not because of your looks, but because you pulled your energy back, you took your power home, and now you don't chase energy, you attract it. You teach people how to treat you by what you tolerate. And every time you accept less than what you deserve, you're lowering your price tag. Not because you're cheap, but because you're afraid no one will pay full price for who you really are. But let's be honest. If you don't know your worth, the world will price you at its convenience. You've been there. That job where you did the work of 3 people, but stayed silent when promotions came? You thought hard work was enough. You thought being humble would speak for itself. But you learned the hard way. Effort without boundaries gets exploited, not appreciated. The raise didn't come. The recognition never arrived. And your value? It stayed hidden under your silence. Because value that is not voiced gets ignored. Then you woke up and you said, I'm not staying quiet anymore. You asked for the raise. You stopped doing extra work without acknowledgement. You demanded respect in meetings. And suddenly, people started to listen. Not because you became someone new, but because you finally stopped putting yourself on clearance. You stopped discounting your voice. Think about relationships. You were loyal, faithful, patient. You forgave things others would have walked away from. And you kept loving someone who gave you breadcrumbs, just enough to keep you hopeful, but never enough to satisfy your heart. You kept giving, kept proving, kept waiting. But here's the truth. You don't prove your worth to someone who is blind to it. You protect your worth by refusing to lower it. When you walked away, when you stopped answering at midnight, when you stopped explaining why you needed consistency, that's when your value rose. Not because you became cold, but because you finally understood you are not a bargain, you are a blessing. And blessings don't beg. They position themselves to be received. Or they move on. Even in friendships, the same pattern repeated. You were always there, emotionally available, giving advice, showing up even when they didn't deserve it. You listened to everyone's problems, but had no one to talk to. You made time for people who never made time for you. And one day it hit you. You were showing loyalty to people who only showed up when it was convenient. So you stopped chasing. You stopped over-explaining. You stopped offering what they never truly valued. And suddenly, your absence became louder than your presence ever was. That's what happens when you set your own price. People may walk away. Some will say, you've changed. Some will try to negotiate your standards. But that's not your concern. Because you no longer serve anyone who can't afford your peace, your loyalty, your time, or your energy. Your value rises when you stop making yourself available to everyone. When you stop overgiving, over-apologizing, over-explaining. When you realize that you are not everyone's answer. And you never should be. You become rare. You become expensive. You become the woman who knows what she brings to the table and refuses to sit with people who expect her to bring everything and still be grateful for crumbs. And when that happens, the world has no choice but to respect your price or leave the store. Because now you're not just aware of your worth, you've put a price on it and you refuse to go on sale ever again. There's a difference between being noticed and being valued. Attention is cheap. You can get it with a filter, a flirt, or a little skin. But respect, that's a whole different frequency. Respect doesn't come from how loud you are or how liked you are. It comes from how deeply you carry yourself when no one is watching, and how gracefully you hold the line when everyone's testing your limits. You used to want attention. You used to light yourself up just to be seen. You'd post, overthink, over-explain, constantly looking for validation in views, comments, or text replies. But here's the truth. Attention is instant gratification. Respect is earned through consistent boundaries. Let's talk about work. You used to say yes to everything, extra hours, extra tasks even, when you were exhausted. You thought if you were always available, they'd finally see your dedication. You were the go-to girl, but never the one they promoted. And one day it hit you. I'm being used, not respected. So you shifted. You started saying no without guilt. You didn't volunteer for every single thing. You stopped seeking approval and started delivering results on your terms. And suddenly, people looked at you differently. You weren't the pushover anymore. You were the professional. You stopped being their convenience and became their equal. In relationships, it used to be about attention. You were flattered by constant texts, long calls, compliments. But attention without effort is manipulation dressed up in charm. You began to see the pattern. All talk, no action. Empty promises, temporary highs. And one day you stopped entertaining it. You didn't block them out of bitterness, you just got bored of basic energy. Now you don't react to flattery. You wait for consistency. You don't fall for sweet words. You watch for aligned behavior. And now, you attract someone who respects your standards, your silence, your space. Even in social circles, attention used to feel like inclusion. You were everywhere, always invited, always involved. But being everywhere meant being nowhere, fully. You were liked, not necessarily respected. You were convenient company, not always treasured presence. So you slowed down. You stopped attending every event. You stopped saying yes out of FOMO. You chose solitude over noise. You stopped updating everyone about your life. And what happened? Your silence became powerful. People began to lean in. Because mystery holds power. And presence, without overexposure, commands respect. Respect isn't just about how people treat you. It's about how they speak about you when you're not in the room. It's when your name carries weight, not drama. It's when people mention your name and say, she's solid, she's not messy, she's not fake, she's real. That's the currency of high-value women. You stop needing the spotlight, and that's when the spotlight started chasing you. Because while other people were performing for attention, you were building depth. While others chased likes, you built character. While they tried to be popular, you became powerful. And the truth is, respect is not loud. It's not flashy. It's quiet, dignified, and rooted. People feel it when you walk in the room. It's in your posture, your poise, your peace. You don't have to speak first or speak often. But when you do, people listen. Because now, you're not here to impress. You're here to lead, to inspire, to influence. Not through noise, but through undeniable presence. You finally realized, I don't want to be liked by many. I want to be respected by the right few. Because attention can follow you one day and unfollow you the next. But respect lingers. Respect building empires. And you're not just building a name. You're building a legacy. There's a point in your life when you stop shrinking yourself to make others comfortable. And that's when the whispers begin. Not because you did anything wrong, but because your strength unsettles those still hiding in their shadows. You walk into a room with your head held high and suddenly you're too much. You speak your truth without apology. And suddenly you're intimidating. But here's the truth they won't admit. Your confidence triggers their insecurity. And that's not your burden to carry. Weak minds don't hate you. They fear the mirror you hold up. When you no longer tolerate disrespect, you expose their patterns. When you stop chasing, you reveal their manipulation. When you stop over-explaining, you highlight their need for control. And instead of owning their weakness, they label your strength as arrogance. But listen, your glow-up isn't up for debate. Your boundaries aren't a discussion, and your standards are not negotiable. Take the workplace, for example. You used to sit quiet in meetings, afraid to speak because you didn't want to sound bossy. You downplayed your ideas. You laughed at jokes that made you uncomfortable, just to fit in. But then, you woke up. You started voicing your truth, pitching bold ideas, correcting unfair treatment. And guess what? Some colleagues suddenly found you aggressive. They started gossiping behind your back. But that wasn't about you. That was about them choking on the air of a woman who finally breathed freely. Even in friendships, you started noticing it. When you began healing, growing, saying no, choosing peace over drama, people pulled away. Not because you were wrong, but because they couldn't manipulate the new you. You stopped being the therapist friend. You stopped being the emotional dumping ground. You stopped accepting last-minute invites and breadcrumb effort. And that stung them. Because they weren't interested in your happiness, they were addicted to your availability. You saw it in family too. The moment you stopped blindly obeying, the moment you asked why, instead of just saying okay, they called you disrespectful. But setting boundaries isn't betrayal. And loving yourself isn't rebellion. It's survival. It's self-respect. And sometimes the loudest critics are just the ones who lost control over you. Even on social media, the moment you stopped posting for approval, the likes dropped. When you stopped playing the nice girl, some people unfollowed. But guess what? They were never clapping for your light. They were clapping for your silence. And now that you're speaking up, standing tall, and glowing without permission, they're uncomfortable, but growth isn't about comfort. It's about truth. They'll call you cold because you don't explain yourself anymore. They'll call you difficult because you don't bend to fit in. They'll call you fake because you choose privacy over performance. But their labels say more about them than about you. Strong women are often mislabeled, not because they're wrong, but because they're rare. You trigger weak minds because you remind them of what they haven't faced, what they haven't healed, what they haven't built. And your very existence becomes a challenge to their mediocrity. But that is not your problem to fix. You weren't born to be digestible. You weren't made to shrink. You are not their comfort zone. You are a wake-up call. So let them gossip. Let them misunderstand. Let them call you names in rooms you've outgrown. Because while they talk, you rise. While they assume, you evolve. While they stay stuck, you build a life they'll watch from the side. There comes a day, not with fireworks, not with a loud announcement, but with a quiet sigh, where you just stop. You stop performing. You stop trying to win the invisible gold medal of being the perfect girl, the always available one, the yes, of course, woman. And in that stillness, in that rebellion against roles you never agreed to play, you meet peace for the first time. Not the peace that comes from silence, but the one that comes from no longer faking smiles, forcing kindness, or proving your worth. All your life you were trained to perform. Smile when it hurts. Say it's okay when it's not. Be accommodating, even when your soul is screaming no. In classrooms, you raised your hand with answers but kept your truth in your chest. At home, you suppressed your dreams to maintain harmony. And in love, you wore masks, softened your voice, dimmed your light, just to be enough. But enough for who? You were not born to audition for approval. Take relationships, romantic or otherwise. You used to twist yourself into a version that would be more lovable. You'd pretend to agree when you didn't. You'd make yourself smaller so he could feel bigger. You watered down your fire because you were afraid of being too much. But the truth is, the real you was never too much. They were just too little. So one day, you stopped. You let the mask fall. And for the first time, you breathed in authenticity and exhaled exhaustion. And that was peace. In the workplace, you performed too. You over-delivered. You smiled through disrespect. You took the blame to keep the team happy. You stayed late, showed up early, and played easy to work with. But inside, you were breaking. And then, something shifted. You realized that no job is worth losing your soul. So you set boundaries. You stopped pretending that burnout was a badge of honor. And you learned that real respect doesn't come from sacrificing your well-being. It comes from knowing your limits and enforcing them with grace. With friends, you wore masks of agreement just to avoid conflict. You laughed at jokes that made you uncomfortable. You went to parties you didn't enjoy just to maintain appearances. You let them unload their chaos onto you while you kept your struggles locked inside. But then you realized, if I have to fake peace to keep friends, I'm not in a friendship, I'm in a performance. And that's when you walked away. No drama, no announcements, just distance. And in that space, you found stillness, clarity, and truth. Even on social media, you performed, you filtered, you posed, you curated your life like a gallery exhibit. You needed validation, likes, hearts, comments to feel seen. But one day, you deleted the app for a week, and the silence didn't hurt, it healed. You discovered that your worth isn't measured by double taps or story views. Your peace lives in real moments, not virtual applause. And suddenly you became rich in something no algorithm can track: inner calm. You no longer chase people who don't see you. You no longer explain yourself to people committed to misunderstanding you. You no longer attend every invite, answer every call, reply to every message, because not everything deserves access to your energy. You don't decorate your wounds to make others comfortable. You don't rush your healing to keep others entertained. You live slower, deeper, freer. And the most powerful shift, you stop apologizing for it. You stop saying sorry for choosing yourself. You stop saying, I'm just tired, when really, you're done performing. You stop saying, I'm fine, when you're not. Because the truth deserves space. And in that truth, you find rest, you find strength, you find peace, not because life got quieter, but because you did. And now, if you've made it this far, I want you to pause and breathe, because something powerful is already shifting in you. This isn't just a speech. this is your reminder. That the day you stop being the nice girl is not the day you become cruel. It's the day you become real. And real shakes the room. Real doesn't beg. Real doesn't chase. Real women don't fear losing people who were only there to benefit from their silence. You see, your kindness was never the problem. Your self-abandonment was. You were taught to be agreeable, even at the cost of your voice. To keep the peace, even if it meant destroying your inner world. But peace without authenticity is performance in disguise. And you were never born to be a background character in your own life. Enough of that. You are not here to be liked. You are here to be legendary. You are not here to entertain comfort zones. You are here to break generational cycles. You are not here to shrink so someone else can feel big. You are here to stand tall and make space for every inch of your magic. So when you stop being the nice girl and you start being the true you, unapologetically, everything changes. People may walk away. Let them. Respect doesn't beg for company. Weak minds may gossip. Let them. Lions don't lose sleep over sheep opinions. The energy you once wasted on approval, redirect it into evolution. The time you spent dimming your light, shine it so bright, it blinds the ones who doubted you. Because the woman who no longer fears being misunderstood is unstoppable. So next time someone says, "You've changed," smile. Say, "Yes, I outgrew the cage you were comfortable seeing me in." Say it with your eyes. Say it with your walk. Say it with